Welcome TM viewers to another episode of Things My Dad Didn't Teach Me. Today I'm going to share with you how we install artificial grass. In this video I'm going to give you step-by-step directions on how to do this job so you can come out with the same finished product. I'm going to share with you the project we just completed in our backyard. And as you can see, it came out really beautiful. We're really happy with the finished product. One of the things that I advise you guys to do is go out and take a look at maybe 30 to 40 different types of artificial grass. Different suppliers offer different products, and it really does make a big difference. Just because something costs more doesn't necessarily mean it's higher quality, or doesn't necessarily mean it even looks better. So step number one, you want to sketch out your design and determine your overall dimensions. Step two, you want to determine your total project budget. And last, you want to select and purchase the materials based upon the research you've done. So here's a list of the required materials. So as you guys have heard me say on other videos, one of the primary reasons that I started this channel was to teach young people things that my dad didn't teach me. Of course, this stuff is applicable to even the older generation, but I just want to give people the confidence and let them see how easy a lot of these projects are. We tend to overpay for a lot of projects that we can technically do ourselves. I decided to rent a skid steer to help level some of this dirt back here in the backyard versus shoveling it all. Of course, if your space is smaller, you can save money there by just shoveling out and leveling a lot of the earth by hand. So once you've actually laid out your perimeter, first thing you want to do is set your sub base, and we decided to use an ABC gravel. Notice here that I have set my line level at 6 inches in height. That's where I want my pavers to finish off at. I want to elevate this turf area so that when it rains it doesn't flood. I want it to sit higher in the surrounding ground area that I'll be eventually putting rocks around the perimeter. Next, I installed 45 feet of paver as a back border. This next step is optional, adding a subgrade bender board around the perimeter. I wanted to minimize the possibility of turf shift over time. The 6-inch landscape nail should work just fine, but because I have young kids and I expect a lot of wear and tear on this turf, I decided I was going to use deck screws to screw in the artificial turf directly into the perimeter subgrade bender board. So next we actually added 3 inches of quarter minus on top of the ABC gravel that we had already laid.
After you've dumped the quarter minus into piles, you then want to just drag it with the 2x4s in order to level that quarter minus material. After we evenly distributed the quarter minus, we then compacted the area using a lawn roller.
By the time we finish compacting this space, it'll end up with a cumulative 4-inch thickness. I spent all of day number 2 completing the install of the pavers around the entire perimeter. If you don't need the pavers around here and you already have a perimeter set, you're going to actually gain a day in your project. So day number 3, I woke up that morning and I watered the quarter minus, pulled the plate compactor out that I actually ran it around. It left a few divots, so then I followed it back up with the lawn roller. So that smoothed things out even more. Next step is to actually use the weed barrier. So we're going to lay that between the turf that we're going to lay out and the actual sub base that we just leveled out. To tack down the weed barrier, I'm using 6-inch stainless steel nails, actually known as yard nails or lawn nails. You want to be careful not to hammer it down too deep in there because you can actually rip the weed barrier fabric. So you want to do it till it's about flush. Alright guys, so it's time to roll this turf out. You'll notice here I got my family helping me roll this turf out. Called a couple of friends to help me move this turf to the locations so that I can actually roll them out. The turf can be pretty heavy. Be sure you know which direction you want to roll that turf out in, because the direction of the blades will matter in terms of the shadowing and the depth of green color that you'll actually see. So when you go to buy the product, make sure you ask the seller which direction you should roll that turf out from. Okay, so day number 4, it's a day off. You're just going to let that turf lay out in the sun, let the sun heat it up. It minimizes any ripples or bubbles that you may actually see in the turf, so it makes it easier to stretch and tack down. Alright, so here we are, day number 5. It's time to actually start cutting the turf for install. So you're going to cut the left and right sides of the turf. Follow those stitch lines that you actually see here as a guide. That way when you go to butt them up, you'll have nice straight lines. Once you get it to your end piece, you're going to cut across the stitching so that you can cut it to your desired length. Alright, so now our goal is to create one large grass area and minimize any appearance of seam lines. We're going to take our seam tape, roll it out. We want to make sure that the dull side is up, cut it to your desired length. We're going to tuck it up under the 2 pieces of turf, try to center it equally, and then you're going to nail this down with the landscape nails about every 12 inches or so. You want to leave a gap at about 1/8 of an inch between the 2 pieces of turf you're going to butt together. Do not butt them up directly or you'll have a very noticeable seam. This turf will expand and contract over time, and so you want to leave that gap about at 1/8 of an inch because it'll give it a natural look. It becomes very difficult to notice that seam. Now in any turf you can always find the seam if you're looking hard enough. I don't care who's laid that turf. So here we want to part the blades and hammer the nails in between the stitching. That way you don't mash down the turf. And as you run up each side of the seam, you want to actually hammer that down about every 8 inches. Next you want to take the 2.5 inch deck screws and screw those into the bender board. That'll be at a gap of about every 10 inches. And as you can see here, you can't even detect the seam. So that's why that 1/8 inch gap really matters. Now we're actually going to apply the infill. There are a lot of different infill options out there, but we chose one for these benefits. So I opted to use a drop spreader. Some people will just take a shovel and disperse it around the yard and then brush it in with a push broom. I also opted to rent a power brush to help blend that product deeper into the turf. So again, it's your option, and it depends on how much money you want to save. I tried to make the job a little bit easier for myself by renting some of these tools, but a lot of these things you can do manually. Since I'm doing such a large space, I decided to minimize some of the labor by renting some tools to kind of help with the job. I'm looking at a 1,350 square foot space here, so that's a pretty large space to manually use a broom to push the product in, and if I were actually using a shovel, it would have taken me a little bit longer than the time it took me to use a drop spreader. So just something that you may want to consider. After I'm done, I like to go and do a final cleanup, do a precision trim around the edges, get any loose pieces from or frayed pieces from around the edges. Guys, so now the project is complete. The last step is to water down the surface for about 30 minutes, help the infill material settle, and now it's just time to enjoy the yarn. Notice how beautiful the project came out. Look at that beautiful turf. Again, make sure you select a high quality turf. Consider the heat resistance capability of the turf as well when you're buying. And my kids are just enjoying the space. And every project we're doing in this backyard just turns out beautifully. So again, details matter. Alright guys, so we're at the end of the project. I hope you actually enjoyed this. You want the job done right, sometimes you got to do it yourself. So believe in yourself, execute the project. You can do this. Hope you enjoyed it. Stay tuned. Don't forget to click the notification bell. Subscribe to the channel. Share the video with other people. Inspire one another. And God bless.